Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Creativity Broadcast. I'm your host, as always, Laura Westman, here to have weird and unique conversations that move our creativity in unexpected and delightful ways. And I'm already like crying a little bit. I'm just so excited to share this person, this resource, this magical person in my life with all of you today. Chelsea Rose Cotton, welcome to the Creativity Broadcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy and excited and honored and delighted and curious to be here with you.
Great. Well,
Mhm.
so we're gonna introduce you in a moment. Um, but I feel like it's important for me to preface this conversation that we are getting to have for my YouTube channel with some pretty key things. The first one is I think you and I share a relationship to creativity and our imaginations that is very pure. Is that a fair assumption to make? I think so. Okay. And I also think that most of the people who watch this channel or find my work around creativity kind of have that same feeling of like, wow, my creativity is a place where I really belong.
Hmm.
And for a lot of us in our adult lives, that's what we're kind of trying to get back to. Like we have this remembering of what our creative, imaginative self was like when we were really young and how free that was, you know? Like I know I've said to you before in our dream circle, like I feel like we're girls in the backyard, like playing pretend. Like that's the level of like security and belonging. Um,
Hmm.
and to me, that is, I think, one of the most like foundationally freeing and secure places that we can find within ourselves. And the more that I am like growing my availability, for that part of myself and like creating a new home for it in my adult life, the more my creativity is just going, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so, one of the reasons why I was so excited to get to share you with all of these people who are watching this, is because the work that I've gotten to do with you, like as part of the dream circle, but also just kind of having you as a colleague and a friend and, somebody who I'm learning from very intentionally. I think that your relationship with the imagination and the imaginative realm has shown me just like the availability of like what my imagination can do. And I've always been someone who's been really active in her dream life, as you know, but getting to work with you is really the first time that my dreams actually had room to really talk to me the way that I feel like they've always been trying to, and they've had a place to breathe and um, have power, you know? So I feel like if I haven't said it to you before and I'm saying it to you right now, I just think that your your approach, your presence, your orientation in the world is such a like really important and beautiful and powerful resource when it comes to that inner well of creative support and creative power. And I feel changed on the other side of a whole year of having you in my life, you know? So thank you so much for that. I'm going to stop talking now and just let you say some things.
Yeah, well, a couple things that you just spoke to that really like touched me. Well, first, I am really honored and grateful to get to be here with you and to get to be in your community in this way. And having you in my life has been such a gift of like even you reflecting to me that the creativity, I don't actually consider myself very creative. So even
So
hearing that,
funny to
it's
me.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's so silly, you know? But I'm like, yes, imagination, yes, dream world. But when you say something like, oh, and your creativity, I'm like, I, oh, I don't really see myself as very creative. So thank you for reflecting and showing me these pieces of myself. And I think that is
Mm,
part of this dream world, that our dreams are continuously showing different parts of ourselves, different parts of our collective, different ways of what's possible.
mhm,
Um, so thank you for being a mirror in that for me in this moment. And one other thing that you just said too at the beginning around our ability that in our dream work together, it has felt like we're little girls pretending, and the safety and security of that. And there's something that hit in like we live in a world that has deemed pretending to be unreal.
mhm,
Pretending is something actually wrong, that like you are wacko, you're crazy, you're weird, whatever the stories are. And what you just spoke into was what, like, that actually the pretending made you feel safe,
mhm,
that there is a security and a realness in it that's so profound that we actually then get to go into these realms together that people deem pretend. And in my experience and in my life, they're actually like more real than anything else. But yeah, there was just something that you spoke to of like this, like, oh yeah, that world actually gets to feel safe.
mhm,
That just really hit me.
mm, mhm. Yeah,
Yeah, that pretending is wrong or
yeah.
weird.
Well, it's funny because when you say that, I realize like the extent to which I have meaningfully inserted pretend into my life. Like I'm a very active improviser. I'm on a team that gets hired to play. Like we're like it's so uh interesting to think about that. But I also think that like there's something for adult women in particular that is very like sacred and kind of edgy about pretend. It's so vulnerable. Like how long has it been since we've done that? You know? It's like really this to me it's like a very cool act of vulnerability to say like I pretend this, here you go, and to have like to actually just trust other people will be like, yes, I
Yeah.
pretend this. It's like really quite cool and powerful. And I remember too, from earlier this year, as we were kind of navigating together in the dream circle, you know, at least my interpretation of somehow of how it went for me was, um, there's waking life that has a certain order to it, and then there's dream life that is we all have our own relationship with that, and I started to notice just like how different I feel in each of those spaces. And like when I'm moving from being asleep to being awake, doing my dream work in the morning or something, there was this feeling of security in my own knowing and in my own processing. And then there would be this sort of like sad moment of like yanking myself out of that into waking life and being like, okay, it's time to go.
Mm.
And what I experienced together was this wonderful, slow blending where suddenly, or maybe not so suddenly, I was just aware that I stopped associating dream life with the fog that I have to shake off to go off and have my waking life. I started to kind of have them both be tinged with the same, um, like, I don't want to call it like a fog because that doesn't seem accurate, but that same sort of like relaxed relaxation, really.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, one thing I think is even if we're not fully aware of, there is so much context that we're taught around our dream world. For the most part, I want to really honor and acknowledge that in many indigenous cultures, people hold dream life as just as important and real, if not even more important than waking life. And to really work with, like, we spend so much of our life actually sleeping and dreaming. And yet we just like put it aside as something separate almost in some way. Um, and what gets to occur when we start to envelop and embrace our dreams as in the wholeness And I'm actually being reminded, Martine Prechtel speaks of um, dreams as um, like the butterfly. Our waking life is, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but is like our yeah, the one part of our wings is the waking life, and the other part of our wings of the butterfly wing is our dream life. And the only way that we actually can fly and fully live
Mm.
is if we are in the wholeness of being the full butterfly, and that they are in relationship with one another all the
Wow.
time. And I love that. And we so often deny all of the wisdom, and not just deny, I want to also acknowledge, because I've worked with a lot of women, especially recently, where their dreams are really intense. They don't want
Mhm.
to actually go to sleep
Mhm.
because so much is coming in. Um, and in my experience, it's like when we actually choose to lean in and embrace that, as hard as that may be, one, our dreams can start to change. But two, when we listen to our dreams, something else gets revealed. But
Mhm.
just like life, the more we deny what's trying to be offered, the more it's going to keep trying to get our attention.
Mhm. Wow, it's so wise. And I think I maybe have said this to you before, but one of the things I noticed change for me in the last year for myself, as someone who's always dreamed and dreamed really vividly and hard, like I'm not a casual dreamer. Let's just put it that way,
You've gone full in. You're
Yeah,
full
100%.
in.
Yeah. Um, I feel like giving my dream life more room, it not only legitimized them and also myself and my relationship with them and the practices I have around processing my dreams and how that informs how I relate to myself and my personal development and my spiritual relationship. Um, I noticed this year for the first time that I can remember I have had pleasant dreams.
Hmm.
And it's not to say that every dream is before this has been a nightmare. It's more just like this tinge almost of stress or anxiety, um, peppered every once in a while with like nightmare, it's like something really difficult. And through our dream circle, I actually started, um, like I think since I can remember, I've had dream symbolism. Like I have people who show up and they kind of represent different things. And like Ringo and Rocket, my pets, show up and tend to represent certain things. So like I kind of have this shorthand with my subconscious. Like I kind of know who those figures are. Um, but this year, the ones that have kind of represented like objects of longing or desire that are usually embroiled with like, difficulty or can't quite reach it or anxiety or something. Um, like my plot lines with these figures this year are so different. And it's like really fun and kind of like blissful. And I wake up sometimes being like, wait, what? Like,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, well, I think, one of the things in terms of for me and our dream circle and in the work that I do in dream tending is it's not about explicitly analyzing, although that can be powerful, but it is about embracing, enveloping, like holding. And with that, just like parts of ourselves, if we do shadow work or any like the different parts that we all hold inside of ourselves, the more we're willing to actually sit with those parts and love and accept those parts and then be in relationship with those parts in a different way allows the softening. It allows the power. It allows a different kind of magic to flow through. And that's part of what I hear occurred for you in our dream work is like, oh, the anxiety dreams used to might be like, I don't want that. I don't, like we don't explicitly want anxiety in our life, right? And when we start to learn that anxiety is just a friend trying to give us wisdom, when our dream that is offering something really intense is actually just is like a friend coming to your,
Mhm.
dream doorway going,
Mhm.
hey, there's something here. And we then can like hold it with that, with like a love and acceptance. Something gets to change,
Mhm.
which doesn't mean we don't still have intense dreams.
Mhm.
I mean, we might have less, but our relationship to it gets to shift that
Mhm.
allows for something different. And that's what I hear you speaking to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Like the embracing and the softening towards it actually provides this opening for it to become something else. There's no like attachment for it to become something else, but the softening lets it. It's almost like how when you're baking, some recipes will call for a stick of butter softened
Mm-hmm.
because it will do something different to the cookie dough versus a cold stick of butter.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering so far just with this conversation, if this has piqued anybody's interest around doing a little bit of dream tending for themselves. Do you have any beginner best practices you might want to offer up? I know
Ooh,
it's weird because we don't know who we're talking to, but you know.
yeah. Yes, there are some beginning ones for sure. Like, one, I want to say that we all dream differently. So we've been talking a little bit more, especially because you are a dreamer who've been dreaming for a long time and you do have details and you do remember. I think it's important to honor and acknowledge that not all of us feel like we do dream or remember our dreams. So I want to say that even if you are someone who's like, oh, this doesn't um, touch me in some way because I don't remember or I don't even feel like I dream, I want to say to you, like, yes, there is still magic and wisdom that's in your sleeping life, even if you don't remember. And so, with that, one practice I would offer is waking up in the morning, when you wake up in the morning and having a dream journal. And even if you don't remember, for some of you, you might wake up and it's like you have every detail down. And for some, I would invite you to write just your felt sense of when you wake up in the morning. And if you had an experience at all through the night of like, oh, I was really restless and couldn't quite get comfortable, and even just like tracking some of how it felt to sleep, and or the dream itself, it lets our dreams know we want to be in relationship. This is about relational, just like so much of life. And just like like people, when we ask people questions, when we're curious about them, when we want to know more, most people are willing to give more because it's like, oh, I'm being seen, I'm being heard. You are actually interested. And I feel like our dreams are the same. So being in relationship with them, getting curious about them, writing them down, again, even just writing how you feel about them. Like that's one of the questions I almost always ask, not just the dream itself, but it's like, how did this dream make me feel?
Hmm.
Because there's a lot of magic there.
Hmm. And you
Um,
used a term, sorry, just a moment ago that I really want to clarify for anybody who doesn't know what it means yet. Felt sense.
yes.
Felt sense is it basically means how do you feel about, like, what are you feeling? What are you sensing? How are you left after this experience? So that's such a wonderful question of just like, whoa, like, how am I left from this night of sleep?
Of
Being
going
like,
into other realms, of
mhm,
traveling. I mean, that's, in my opinion, again, it's like our dreams are portals into other realms that have wisdom for us.
mhm,
We can time travel in dreams. We can receive healing
mhm,
from ancestral trauma in dreams. We can receive guidance from just the next thing that we need to do the next day. Um, and with that, I'm so glad you spoke to the felt sense thing, Laura, because I also want to acknowledge that for most of us, we live in a culture and a world that asks us to very much steer away from our body wisdom and from how our body feels. So sometimes it can be actually, that can feel really, really hard.
mhm,
Like even that question, like, what is the felt sense? Many of us might be like, I don't know. I don't even know what that means. And two, I don't
mhm.
even know. So a couple ways to also
Or
dig
like,
a
how
little.
do I even slow down enough to even think about it? Like, I've got all these other things I'm already feeling. Like,
I'm already, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I just want to invite two inside of that. One, it takes practice. There's no right or wrong way, but it takes practice in choosing to slow down, pausing. I mean, for me, one of the biggest practices is just like taking a deep breath in and just checking in for a moment. So that might be when you wake up, taking a deep breath in, checking in for a moment, and then literally feeling like, oh, does my body feel tingly? Does my body feel like there's pulsing? Is there an ache? Is it dull? Is it stabbing? Like, and I'm just kind of offering words for those of you who are listening who may not like know how to kind of start to listen in that way. It's like start to just let yourself feel the sensations. And even in that, you might feel like you're making something up. This is not real. That's where we so often go. Um, and I think we've talked about this, and both of us are Harry Potter fans, right?
Yes.
Do you- yes, okay. I'm going to speak to this, and I'm going to again also butcher what Albus Dumbledore says to Harry, but at the crossing, King's Crossing, um, in the last book, Harry, asks Albus, "Am I making all this up in my head?"
Hmm.
And he kind of goes like, "If you are, it doesn't mean it's not real."
Yeah, he's like, well, of course, Harry, but you know, it may be in your head. Who's to say that that isn't exactly real? Wow, I just butchered it too, but I know exactly the quote you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think about that often because so often, even as we start to do dream work, as we start to tap into our creativity, as we start to be in our imagination, we have been taught, well, that's not real.
Hmm.
You're making it up. And I feel like so much of even dream work is just trusting. Like, what if you trusted it was real?
Hmm. Well,
What if you
and
trusted it was real?
this thing that you just said, I feel like it just had me connect a dot too, about like, okay, so we have been taught, usually systematically to be like really disconnecting from our felt sense in our bodies. And one of the like really cool things about getting to actually feel into your dreaming life and your sleeping life is it is one way that you can practice letting it back in and like actually getting more in touch with how you actually feel about things and with your intuition. Like if you're able to practice it here, then it actually makes more sense. You now have kind of this you have this new sense memory of like, oh, here's how I know I'm listening to myself, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm. Yeah. And that's then the remembering that you spoke to too. It's like we actually do know how to do these things. We've been taught to not, most of us, and it's like a relearning and a re-remembering.
Hmm. Hmm. And I think that's also part of for me why this is so linked to creativity is because that remembering is it's kind of like opening a channel of possibility and creation. It's like I don't know about you, but like my girl self, like she makes everything confidently, you know,
Uh-huh.
like
Uh-huh.
like running free feral in the backyard with no shoes, putting leaves together to turn them into something. It's like there's so much that's just like always flowing and always getting created. And so that's part of why I think for creative people and for artists, when we're in that state of creation and flow that so many of us are like really desperately longing to connect for again, to me, our dream state and our imaginative self is almost just like this wellspring of flow and creative power, and so when we're able to intentionally like wake that back up, it sort of opens these doors for all these other things to really flow and happen. I will also just own, I say this not intentionally on every video that I do, but I feel like I kind of keep coming back to this um this perspective that I just own about creativity, that it just is how it is for me, which is for me, my creativity is how I connect with my personal truth and like the deepest sense of who I am. And
Mhm.
so for me, the opportunity to have more ways to connect with that pure imagination, to me, that's everything because that's the creative power, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
And otherwise, it sort of just feels rote and making things being routine. Like, what's even the point of that?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a couple things that sparks in me. One is imagination is the bridge to everything. And our dreams, whether it's dream world of our sleeping time and or our dream world of our waking life, um, we don't actually, we have, as human beings right now on the planet, everything we experience is because someone has imagined it. Someone has dreamed it up. There is nothing that we experience throughout the day that isn't happening because someone was willing to dream it, whether it's
Mhm.
you or someone else. Like
Mhm.
every single thing. And from that place, then we literally are living in our own like imaginative world. How rad is that?
Yeah, it's so cool. It's also reminding me not to, no, wait, no, you first.
Well, you go and then I can say the next
Oh,
thing.
I was just gonna say I have this other video on the channel called what's it called? 5 Reasons You Should Be Fantasizing, you know? And
Yeah.
like to me, that's part of why that matters is like when you're fantasizing and you're in some kind of imaginative realm or like you're going into fantasy land in your brain on purpose, like sometimes it's pure dissociation out of survival, and that's cool. I mean, it sucks that you have to, but I get it. And then there are other times when it is pure and it is a pure place where you can go and tinker with desires and tinker with future visions and actually feel how it would feel to have those things be real in your body. Like, how would it actually feel to dot, dot, dot is one of my favorite things to use fantasizing for.
Mhm.
Um, I just love it. I wish more grown-ups were interested in doing it, you know?
Well, what's fascinating to me, and this is something that's just recently that I've been working with, and we actually imagine all the time. We are imagining all the time. But we, most of us, again, and I'm going to speak to like Western culture because this is not true for all cultures. But for many of us in the Western world, our imagination is often used for what ifs, for
That's
negative,
right.
like the negativity of things, like, well, what if this is going to happen? What if I fail? What if this, like, and so that is our imagination. We have just been taught to use it for those things, and that is like more socially acceptable. It's
Hmm.
more socially acceptable to be in the negative scarcity mindset in many ways than the possibility, creative, wild, feral out there. But that is our imagination. We're
Hmm.
imagining all the things that could go wrong. What if you just were able to start to shift that muscle and use it towards the desire, the fantasy, the things that you want to experience and have? Because we are actually already using our imagination.
Hmm.
So let's just like, if we can, shift it. And then what else could
Yeah. Just like move the orientation a little bit over this way. Yeah, that's so wise. It's so cool. So,
happen?
what would you like to share about your background? I just dove us right in. I was like, let's talk about these important things, but now that people have a sense of like you, what would you like to inform them of?
Yeah. Well, I feel really, really blessed with the background actually that I have. And there's ways that I did not always feel that way, but I feel now like just such privilege. A huge piece of my background is that at 13, um, we just moved to Ashland, Oregon. I was reading in our living room, and these two huge dogs ran into our house. The doors were not, they were closed, but they ran in. Their names were Amigo and Spirit.
Ooh,
And I brought them outside, and a woman was standing at the end of our driveway. And as soon as I saw her, I just felt a deep connection with her. And she ended up being a shamanic healer from the Andean mystic path.
wow.
And so at 13, and right away, I like said, I want to work with this woman. And so for 17 years, I apprenticed with her, uh, going to all of her workshops, classes, all of her healings, working with her teachers who are from the Quiro tribe in Peru. And particularly her teachers are Juan Nunez del Prado and Don Benito.
Mm.
And so traveling to Peru and Ecuador and Mexico and working with wisdom keepers and elders and really deeply learning. um, well, indigenous ways of being, initiated into certain traditions inside of that and into certain ceremonies, and really connecting in a not mainstream way of working with the unseen, of working with dreams, of working with nature, of being deeply connected to nature. And so that has been a huge part of all of my work in the world and who I am, is for me, in my experience, especially in this wild, chaotic, often destructive world, these unseen places, these connections to spirit, this other way of being, felt way more at home for
Mhm.
me. Like that I could get. This world for me has often been like, what, what, what is happening here and why? uh, and that way of being felt like, okay, this that made more sense to me than than many of our Western culture ways. And so I've blended all of that into, I've done a lot of nonprofit work. I mean, I could go into like different things. What I'm excited about right now is this retreat, and more than a retreat, that I just launched called the Beauty Way. And it is about our rediscovering of beauty that is all around us all the time.
Mm.
And really coming into, again, right relationship, communion with receiving what nature has to offer us, with receiving like really the beauty that can, if we're willing to again orient to it,
Mhm.
that is available in any given moment.
It's so special. It's so cool. I never knew that story about those dogs. I didn't know that was the beginning.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, well, I'm glad then I shared then. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. Well, and just another plug about the Beauty Way. So you co-lead this with our friend and colleague Lauren Borden.
Lauren Borden.
Yeah, who's also just such a like talk about spanning two worlds, you know? The Beauty Way, your first retreat looked so amazing. I was like reading it, like salivating, and then, just getting to hear a bit from Lauren about what it was like to co-create that experience for everybody there together with you. Man, it just sounds like such a dream. So beautiful.
It is a dream. Actually, and when we're talking about dreams, like I feel like the beauty way and what it's showing and revealing to me, is like over a decade of percolating visions, dreams, ideas that have been inside of me, yeah, for over a decade that now are like coming into form
Mm-hmm.
and coming into reality and coming into like, oh, that's how that happens. And so there's also an ease. There's no efforting. There's just like, oh, that's how it looks. And it's not my personal preference explicitly. It's like
Yeah.
what the of it itself
Mm-hmm. And like what's asking to be created, what's
and
asking
what
to come. Yeah, totally. That's such a wonderful place to create from, so you're really partnering with the idea and not just exerting your will upon
yeah,
it
well, my will
or
has nothing to do with it really, other than the willingness to be open to receive.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
That's so cool. And so if folks are interested in like following you, following up with you, do you have an email list they can get on or like what's the best way for them to find you?
Yeah, I my email itself, I do have a website too, which I can say out loud. I mean, it's chelsearosecotton.com. It's my full name, basically, chelsearosecotton.com. So you can see more of the work that I'm doing and up to. I do have an Instagram, but I'll just share as someone who's more in the other world. I don't post all the time, but you can at least find me there, which is Feral Visionary.
I have
That's my
told a
coaching.
lot of people about you because
Uh-huh.
of like by way of your Instagram handle. I've been like blah blah blah, Chelsea this, Chelsea that. Also, her handle is Feral Visionary, which is really cool. So anyway, I just yeah, it's really awesome. And I also just really want to celebrate, own like draw stars around. It really takes something in this world to be a person who stands for softness and who stands for that blending. I feel like getting to um, just being with you and like being in your presence, one of the most wonderful things about it is just the like magnificent way that you are able to find more stability through your softness. And that's, I feel like, what you bring to every space and every conversation. And I'm just so grateful that our paths have been smooshed together in the way that they have.
Yeah, me too. I'm so grateful. I learned from you so much. And even again, this like in this conversation right now, I'm like, wow, the beauty way is a creative. That's like, it's not, I even have had a context of what creativity looks like, which is like a certain piece of art, let's
Uh-huh.
say,
Yeah, totally.
which
Yeah.
is so silly. I mean, it's not silly, but like, oh, creativity is like so vast. And
Hmm.
even getting to have this conversation, I'm like, oh, the beauty way is my painting. It's like that is my creative art
Yeah.
out into the world. That is like a living laboratory that gets to be lived, like people actually get to come inside and live and learn like this way of leading and living their
Yeah.
life.
Laboratory. That is so great. Yeah. Also, it's worth saying, um, so a couple of weeks ago now, months? Has it been a few months since we did the improv session?
Yeah, I think that was in August.
Oh my gosh, where's the time going?
No.
It's all made up anyway. But um, so just for all of you listening, Chelsea and I got to host it's a little over an hour, right? Was it just an hour
Shower.
session together where Chelsea led us in some resonance and I led an improv exercise and the level of like connection and play and intimacy that showed up with those two things together was so special. It was so cool. And I like even just like just to use your lab analogy, like that 1 hour was a little beaker and your resonance was one potion,
Mhm.
chemical, whatever, I don't care. And then,
I like potion.
okay, and then improv was this other potion and it just like bubbled into something that like neither of us could have predicted or like explained or tried to, control in any capacity. And like that is deeply creative, that ability to just allow the flow and dance and make something in the moment. To me, that is like one of the like most wonderful expressions of creativity ever. Also, it was really fun. We should totally do it again.
You should
Yeah.
totally. Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things that's coming up for me to share too in that is everything and anything I do is really from this like it's sacred. Like even at being asked to be on your YouTube channel. It's like this
Hmm.
is a sacred ritual between us two and then anyone else who listens, as well as any of the unseen beings who are listening. And I really hold it as such. And from that place, then anything is possible. Then our imagination, then how we mix our potions together. The control, actually, it's like control gets to be let go.
Yeah, it's
But
almost
like
like too
deeply,
small. Like it's sort of just
yeah.
like, oh, you're like you're a little needle, and we have like giant paintbrushes, so it's like, not today, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we get like when we meet life with that kind of peace, whatever that is for each of us, um, so much more gets to become available. And when we
Hmm.
can release then the control, like I am so clear that in my languaging, spirit, divine, the universe, whatever it is for each of us, has such a bigger imagination, and I want to flow and follow that.
Uh-huh.
Because if I only just did what I thought or what my own control, it's like it's never as big as what it can be.
Yeah, totally. And the idea that could be is hilariously fun. Like it's so funny to me. I will. Oh, one other thing I wanted to say too is I hope that it's clear just in how we're talking about this that these types of skills, I guess I could call them skills, are like it can feel like they're so far apart from leadership or business development, any of the sort of like nuts and bolts of waking life. But I think what is so magical is that they kind of help you skip steps in waking life. To me, they are like some of the most useful skills actually in developing somebody's leadership, whether it's through their voice or through really growing in relationship, or coming up with plans that seem so imaginatively strange that like they actually will work out because they are that weird. I
Mhm.
think that's one of my favorite things about imaginative leadership is like using it to go beyond what is even reasonable to imagine creating. And I say this a lot to my one-to-one clients actually. I feel like the most success I've ever had doing anything is when I let it be as weird as possible.
Mhm.
Because when it's as weird as possible, it's as me as possible. And that's the thing the world responds to,
Mhm.
no matter what you're doing, no matter what you're leading or writing or trying to nurture into being.
Mhm.
I feel like that's a very strange and unexpected and amazing lesson.
Mhm. Yeah, I love your weird. I hope you just get like weirder and weirder and weirder. I hope we get weirder and weirder together.
I know, me too. I feel like in my dreamscape, my hut is right next to your hut. Like there's like oh my God. We're just like growing old and imaginative together right there. It's so wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I'm so happy that we got to do this. Is there anything else you want to share or say here as we wrap up?
Yeah, I actually feel like I've been getting this nudge to speak to, for many of us, and especially in this like context of dream tending and dream worlds, and you kind of spoke to this at the beginning too, Laura, is like you've been doing this for a long time, but then getting into like, I'm going to say the community and the
Hmm.
circle and getting to share dreams and actually hold them together allowed for something not only in your own personal working with dreams powerful, but like we created something that was like beyond what we thought.
Hmm.
It's been so supportive of us for this whole year.
Hmm.
Um, and I think what I want to speak to in that is that our dreams aren't just for us. They are meant to be held. It is a collective. And when we start sharing our dreams, both in waking and or sleeping dreams, something else becomes available. Something more, even in your own creativity, can become available. And a
Hmm.
vision and dream then for the collective becomes more available. And one of the things why I love dream work and why I feel passionate about it right now too personally is that in our world with all that is occurring, our ability to transmit information and wisdom and knowledge in other forms is going to be really necessary. And our
Hmm.
ability to trust that, like that when I wake up and I go, oh my gosh, Laura said I need to plant cantaloupe, I do it. Because for whatever reason, it's like, okay, I got the message and I've built enough of my own knowing to trust what comes through. And this happened just recently, but Verizon, I don't know if any of you have Verizon, but Verizon like went down for a day.
That's right.
And like people couldn't, contact each other, whoever at least had Verizon. Whatever you believe, I hold that more and more of those kinds of things are going to occur. So our ability to trust these other ways of knowing are going to actually be necessary for our
Mm.
livelihood and our thriving.
Hmm.
Um, so I offer that and like a practice too of like these are ways that we get to really start to build trust inside of each other and trust these other ways because it might actually become necessary.
Hmm. It's powerful. Also, now I'm definitely going to try to send you messages about cantaloupe and just see what happens.
I've actually been thinking for this next layer of like dream work is like actually gathering a group and being like, okay, so let's actually start sending each other particular messages and see what happens.
It's
Just
really cool.
again, to be in the play, to be in the
Hmm.
experiment, not because we have to get it right, but who knows then what comes from that, like
Yeah.
what we learn.
Totally. It's
Oh,
also
that.
like, I think I'm picking up on your ideas because the novel that I'm working on, one of the forms of magic is called ethereal. And it's people who are, you're treading the dream realm, you're coming back and forth. And one of the plot lines is actually around like a relationship developing in the dream world between two characters.
Hmm.
Um, and like it's part of how people can send messages back and forth is like the finding each other in the dream realm to do so.
Love
It's
it.
pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Oh my gosh. Ah, I love it. Well, thank you again. I think I'm going to link to everything that you mentioned below so you all can click around. You can find Chelsea online. You can find the next dates for the next Beauty Way retreat, which I highly recommend attending. And I also just want to remind everybody you can have my free guide, Uncover Your Creative Magic, which is at www.laurawestman.com/uncover. And if you enjoyed this conversation and would like to see more like this, go ahead and give this video a like and hit subscribe to the channel, which helps me grow. So thank you. And Chelsea, thank you. I'd give you a really big hug if we weren't 3 hours apart. Time difference, blah, blah. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.